Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Self-Published Success, a show that highlights forward-thinking authors who chose self-publishing over traditional and found success in doing so. My name is John Feldman, founder of Visionary Literary, and your host for today's show. Our guest today is Cameron Sutter. Cameron is a YA sci-fi fantasy author, a software developer, and the inventor of Plottr, Plottr. The popular visual planning software for books and stories of all kinds. An avid reader who is endlessly learning how things work, his life's mission is to help writers write more powerful stories and to encourage everyone to read the classics. He comes to us today from Oklahoma City, where he lives with his wife, 6 kids, and several furry friends, to introduce us to his innovative outlining platform and how we can use it to seamlessly structure our book ideas. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. So this will be a little bit of a different structure to today's show for anyone listening, rather than discussing the benefits of self-publishing your book. Cameron and his company, Plottr, the product is very innovative. I was lucky enough to have a behind-the-scenes look from their marketing director, and I'm excited to introduce this idea to all of you. So before we dive into that, Cameron, give us a little bit of a background about you, who you are, and what got you into writing and outlining.
Yeah, so I've been writing on and off my whole life. Like in first grade, I was writing during English class actually, and I got in trouble for writing a story when I should have been listening. Which I look back now and I'm like, you'd think the teacher would encourage me
Right.
to write, but so yeah, I started. I think I said that was first grade, and I'd write on and off. In seventh grade, I wrote my first novel during homeroom period when everybody else was talking and having fun. I was writing a novel, the nerd in the corner, kind of. Um, and then I kind of left writing for a little while, and then I came back to it, and then I left again, and eventually I had a class by Brandon Sanderson at BYU, and he got me really excited about writing again. And so I started writing. That was 2013. I started writing again, and I was after I graduated, I was still going strong, and I just didn't love my process. I was rewriting my books over and over, and they just weren't working. And um, so I graduated as a software engineer, and so I started looking at other tools, what were out there, what could I do to make my process better, but I didn't see anything that was what I saw in my head. And so I was like, well, I could just build it. So let's just start building it. And I was with a writing group at the place I worked. I started a writing group there, and they're like, "Yeah, let's build it." And so I saw in my head this like idea of the threads of a story weaving together, and how they come together to make a story. And I saw this visual thing in my head. I'm like, there's got to be a way to plan a story like that. So I just started building, and in my group, they thought it was great. They thought it was a great idea that it would help their stories, and so I was like, I wonder if anybody else would find this useful. So I put it on a few forums. It sounded kind of self-promotory, and so the forums didn't like that, but it got out there, and people, I got a couple hundred beta testers actually. And then after a few years, I'm like, okay, this has value. This is really awesome. Other people think the same way I do. And so then I started charging for it in 2017, and I was able to leave my job and do it full time in 2020 after I met Ryan. So
Well,
it's been cool. Yeah.
congratulations on that. One thing that I noticed in there is that even before, it was several years before you even started charging, right? Like you
Yeah.
were, and before, as you were trying to go through and get that, that product market fit, where you make sure that you have the user base. So many of us, when we start companies or we start our books, right, we're in a rush. We can see the finish line and we want to get there, but you were very patient with it. Then obviously it worked out well because you took that time to, I don't know, build, rebuild, make sure that you were speaking with those users, and they obviously liked it enough to start buying it in 2017. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's typical for my personality, honestly. Like I'm usually so impatient, but
Yeah.
I really just did it for my own books. I did it on the side, and it was like at the time, I don't know, I had 4 kids or something, but uh, I was just doing it in my free time, which is very slow, and I was just doing it for myself, so I didn't really think too much of it. Even though for almost every software developer you talk to, they're like they have their idea that they want to build someday, and hopefully they can do that full time and they'll get paid for it, you know. And so that was me. And I thought maybe someday, but just over a few years, I'm like, you know what, this really people really like this. So yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. So that is the software engineer side of you is great. It's funny that my kids, I try to get them to learn how to code. I do not know how to code. And it's funny because they say, like, do you want to teach me how to write books? And I say, absolutely not. I want you to learn how to code, because I feel like writing code for the future is more important. As we record this, Chat GP or GPT-4 was just released yesterday, which is huge for our writing industry. But now I'm going
Right.
down. I'm getting sidetracked here because that's very exciting, and I'm always excited to speak with a software developer because I wish it's a skill that I had learned. But for you, Plottr, obviously several years getting into it, sticking with it. Congratulations for everything that came about. You mentioned
Well,
at one. Go ahead.
to sorry, just to comment on what you said there. I've been trying to teach my son to code for a long time, and he never wanted to. Because yeah, I feel like it's important, not just because I do it, but I see that. Although
Yeah,
Chat GPT also, is coders, developers are worried about that too.
right.
But he finally learned this year, and I was able to do it with Scratch. So if you've ever heard of that, Scratch is a fun way to program. And my son spent like a month or two building a game on there, which is he's never dedicated himself so much to something like that. So maybe that'll help you. But
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, I wrote that down here on the side for anyone listening that didn't see me. Look over and write that down on my notepad. I'll be bringing that over to my kids after this.
yeah,
So going back to writing, regular writing, novel writing.
yeah, yeah.
You're a software developer and a writer, but you love classics. You said that was in the intro. We mentioned that was one of your missions, is to have people read the classics. So what are the classic books that you are drawn to?
Yeah, so in high school we had to read some of the classics, Grapes of Wrath, Great Expectations, things like that. 1984, and at the time I didn't appreciate them. I was forced to read them, and I generally didn't like them. Um, but in the last 5 years, I've started reading them because I wanted to, and because my wife highly suggested that I do, because she's always loved the classics, and so she really got me into them. And as I started reading them, they are so powerful. They explain the human condition so well, and I think it's one thing that's kind of missing. We read a lot of Twitter and Facebook, but we don't read the classics, and because of that, we miss out on a lot of humanity that you get from these books. And so ones that have really touched me are like Anne of Green Gables, Fahrenheit 451, Little Women, um, Great Expectations. I reread that one. It's really great. There's yeah, kind of blanking on some of the others, but those ones have been just so formative for me in the last few years, just helping me to see what it is to be human and just build my character.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned 1984 because that's been making a little bit of a comeback here recently due
I
to,
can imagine.
yeah, due to current events. But it's always nice to hear that, like, there are so many books that are released. Like we say that it's roughly 1 million books every year come out or published, because yeah. So we always get the shiny object syndrome, where it's like new book. But some of those classics, like you said, it's just um it's different. They hit a little bit differently. So for anyone
Yeah.
listening, if you haven't read any of those, make sure that you get your hands on some classics. So, and the next question, now I want to go back to software development, because it's, I, when I think of you and trying to put together like writing and software developing, as a software developer, there are so many different ways that you could create a writing platform, you know, especially now with AI. But what made
Yeah.
you what drew you to the outlining and structuring process with Plottr?
It was really just for myself. Um, I just wanted something to be my perfect tool because I tried a bunch of different things. You mentioned use a cork board.
Yeah.
I've tried spreadsheets, I tried Scrivener, I tried so many different things, and they all have their pros and cons. But I just wanted something perfect for me. And it's funny because a lot of people say, when is Plottr going to be a writing tool? When can I write my story in Plottr? But um, I just, maybe someday down the line, but really we're just trying to focus on being a really good plotting and outlining tool. If you try and do too much, you end up not being great at anything usually.
Yes. Yes.
So, so that's all it was. It was just for myself. It was selfish. It was just for myself.
Well, good. And again, I'm glad you stuck with it through all those years. But that is one thing I'm sure, speaking with writers and writers that use your platform, they kind of want it all on one platform. But it could be so easy for you to try to branch out and do so many things, and then you're a jack of all trades inside the writing software world instead of really owning in on your craft. So
Yeah, there's so many things that I don't know. One of the things I love doing is I read a book about writing, and my mind immediately thinks of how can I build software to describe how to do this process.
yeah,
And so we've got so many ideas just for the plotting and outlining process that other people can do great at the writing. There's great tools out there, but we're really going to make the plotting, outlining, and the series Bible uh, process really great.
I like that, the series Bible process too, because that's something that as Netflix continues to just rake in shows, series Bibles are very important to put together in a structured format. So
Oh
when it
yeah.
comes to that, what Plottr does, tell us a little bit about somebody who's listening for the first time, never heard of Plottr, never been inside of Plottr. Tell us a little bit about what it does and who it benefits.
Yeah, so Plottr, the main screen of Plottr looks kind of like a super friendly kid spreadsheet. There's columns across the top and then rows down the side, and it's all colorful, and you can drag and drop things easily. And so the columns across the top are your chapters, and then the rows are the different plot lines. And so you can have as many plot lines as you want, and that's one of the key things, just being able to visually see the difference um, of your plot lines and what's happening as your story progresses in each one of the plot lines.
Right.
And that was the main discovery there of creating Plottr. Of this is a visually planning your stories just makes it so much easier and more fun, and it's
Yes.
easy to spot like plot holes and things like that. But then along the way, we found that it's so valuable for other things that we didn't think of too. Being able to edit your story, and the editing process is so much easier when you have a visual way to look at it instead of having to read 100,000 word manuscript to edit a story. Just being able to look at the plot points and move them around while you're talking to the author that you're editing or something like that. That's just been really, really cool for people. And then the series Bible, that was really cool. It kind of took us by surprise how valuable that was, but um, being able to keep the continuity between books is really powerful, because after book 3, 7, 10, you're
Yeah.
not going to remember the eye color or the what city so and so is from in book 1. And so being able to go back and look at it very easily and just have all your notes in one spot for the whole series, it just is really cool. I'm finally getting around to writing a sequel to one of my books, and it was the book before I had Plottr, and so now I have to reread it to figure out what happened in that book, and it's just a painful process.
Yeah. So that's important. And I know I mentioned with the series, like, Netflix picking up in series Bibles and TV writing, but series Bibles in fiction writing, especially literary agents now, it's very rare that you reach out to a literary agent and say, this is a standalone book and they're interested in it. Usually it's what's book number 2, what's book number 3, what are the ideas, because they want to see continuity in sales as well. They want to make sure that they have a long-term established relationship with you rather than one and done. So that,
That's really flipped.
yeah,
It used to be the other way.
yeah, yeah. Now it's very important that you have, especially if you're a fiction writer and you're writing fantasy or like YA, like you, it's having a standalone book is something that is, I mean, that could be the deciding factor on if or a literary agent wants to represent you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, good. So Plottr is great. Again, so many when it comes to structuring and outlining, one thing that you mentioned is when you have everything in order from the outlining perspective, it's more fun to write. And that is so, so important because
Yeah.
when you sit down to write and you have it's just creativity. You have the ideas, everything's there next to you. Just write creatively, have fun with it. Like that's you can churn out so many, the word count per day can be so much higher if you're having fun writing because you know what you're writing next, rather than those pantsers that fly by the seat of your pants. You sit down and you have a little bit of an idea and you start to go, and then other ideas pop up in your head and you're like, wait a second, which one's better? You don't know where you're going, so you really hinder the writing process.
Yeah. And it's funny, but for pantsers, we found that Plottr is super valuable for them, not because it changes them into a plotter, but because after they write the first draft, they will come back and put it into Plottr as like a step two, and then it makes it so much easier for the other drafts. And everybody uses it differently, and Plottr is actually really great at being flexible for your process. But some people find that they actually do plot, even though they thought they were pantsers, but it's only like a few steps ahead of where they're writing. And that's kind of where I've realized I am. So I'm mostly a plotter, but when I get kind of the middle, I only plot a few steps ahead of where I'm writing. And so I can still do that in Plottr, and it's been super valuable.
Good. So Plotter has, again, you were sticking with the outlining, the structuring portion of the writing process. Maybe in the future you branch out, but how, for most of your users, what does the process look like with integrating with other areas of the writing and publishing process?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So um, Plottr will let you export your project into Word or Scrivener. And so because of that, you can once you have your outline or what you think you're going to write, you can just export it to whatever you write in and just start writing. And and before you get to Plottr, some people, like I said, will write a first draft first, and you can actually import from Scrivener into Plottr. So if that's how you do it, you just import it, and then you kind of move things around in Plottr, um, and then a lot of times you'll export it again into Scrivener in a new project, and then write draft two or whatever. But yeah, we realize that the writing process has lots of different tools now, a lot of softwares, and so we're trying to integrate with the different ones to make your process seamless in between them.
That's excellent. Yeah, because the seamless process is very important. That again makes it fun too. So when you're writing and you have an outline, that's fun. And then when you have a seamless process where you know where you're coming from and you know where you're going next, that also makes the writing and publishing process fun. So one
Yeah.
question along the lines of that of the process and then structuring, half of the listeners, we're about 50-50 with fiction authors and nonfiction authors. Is is Plotter good for both fiction and nonfiction authors?
Yeah, that's a good question. We found that there are definitely people that use it for nonfiction, and it works pretty much the same, but they do it a little different. Instead of different plot lines, maybe there's different topics that are threads throughout the story or throughout the book, or you can just think of them maybe not as threads, but you could say for the different where in a book in a fiction book you would say this is plot line one. You could say maybe subsection one, subsection two, and then each chapter will have that. And it'd be easier to explain that by seeing it. But so we have found that people do it. Another answer to that is things like memoirs that are
Yeah.
very similar to fiction. And the third answer to that is this year we're actually making what we're calling right now a nonfiction mode, where Plottr is going to be even better at working for nonfiction. And we're trying to talk to a lot of people that write nonfiction to say, how could this work better for your process? And so that's the stage we're at right now. And so later this year, we're hoping that there'll be a nonfiction mode, whatever that means.
Well, that's exciting. I can see how the fiction mode would work anyway, because like you said, with memoirs or business books where there are different case studies in there and you reference a case study from earlier in the book. So that's very important to make sure that you keep everything in order and factual, going from consistency from one chapter to the next. But I'm
Yeah.
excited to hear about when that upgrade, that enhancement for the nonfiction specific comes out, because I and half of our listeners will be very excited to hear about that.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you about that actually. Maybe you can give us some insights.
Happy to. We'll hang back after the call and do so. But
Okay.
when it comes to Plottr, you mentioned nonfiction being down the line, something nonfiction specific. What else? I'm sure that there are many different ideas that are thrown at you all the time. What does the future hold? The near future, obviously, for Plottr.
Yeah, so at the end of this month, actually, we're releasing a big feature that we've been working on for uh, over a year now. It has to be over a year, and we're calling it act structure. So right now in Plottr, you only see one level at the top, so there's only chapters, or you could rename them to scenes if you wanted to. But this change will make it so you can see act, chapter, and scene at the top. And there's a couple different ways to view it, which is really cool. You can see it all stacked up. So act at the top, and then you'll see the chapters within the act, and then the scenes within those chapters. Or you could see it in a tabbed view, so you only see Act One or only see Act Two, for example. Um, so there's a couple different ways to visualize it there, which is cool. And this has been in beta for a while. We've been testing it and trying it out. People have given us feedback for, like I said, I think over a year. And so at the end of this month, we're finally releasing it, and it's going to be there's a lot of surprises that people haven't seen before. So that is one big thing. Another big thing that we're doing later this year. So search and replace, that's something that people have been asking for. So
I
that's
imagine.
another big thing on the horizon. Yeah, being able to, if you change your character name, or what I do at the beginning of the story, I don't know the character name, so I just XXXX and
Yeah.
then YYYY, um, all in caps so that I know to change it later. But to make that easier to change, mid story, change character name and stuff. So that those are some of the things we're working on.
Excellent. So the three things that we mentioned, and I'm sure there are many coming down the line, but I do love the customization part, how you can have, acts and chapters and different structures, and you can see how you, like you were saying, you can choose how you lay it out, how you visualize it. So that's crucial, because we all have different. For clutter is subjective.
Yeah.
Some of us have, a little bit of stuff on the screen is considered clutter. Some of us could have, 50 different tabs open on our Chrome browser, and that is just a normal everyday
Yeah.
occurrence. So it's nice to be
Yeah.
able to do that. So how can listeners access the platform?
Yeah, so we have a website, plottr.com, and Plottr is spelled Plottr. It's not the typical way, so I try and spell it out. Um, but yeah, just plottr.com. There's a free trial. You can try it out, see if it's for you. We've got a YouTube channel with tons of videos for how to use it. A lot of them are just short, like here's how to do this one thing. And I love those kind of videos because I
Yes,
don't have half an hour to watch a video, but a 2 minute video about how to do one specific thing is great. And then there's also deeper dives by Troy Lambert, who is our kind of education lead, and he talks to other users like and asks them how they use Plottr. And everybody uses it differently. It's incredible to see how varied the ways are that people use it. But he deep dives with them and asks them and gets them to show how they use it. So we've got lots of content so you can learn how to use it and how it's going to work for your process.
I love that. I love short YouTube videos. If I go and I search on Google and the top 5 videos come up, I pick the shortest one, because it's
Yeah.
like you said, I don't have I don't want a video where it's the first 3 minutes are an introduction and someone talking, and then it's a 10-second tip. I just want the 10-second tip thrown in there. So I love
Yes,
you. Yeah. Love your short
exactly.
videos. So where can people, we know where people can access Plottr, how they can use it. We've talked so much about its benefits. Where can people follow you personally if they want to hear more about what you're working on with your personal books or any other side projects?
Oh man, I don't I don't really have a place. I write a little on Medium,
Oh,
but
good.
I'm really bad at having a social media presence. So I talk more on the Plotter Facebook group that we've got.
Okay.
Um, but I'm also not very good at talking there. So, but I do post occasionally. Um, but
Well,
I'm hoping I started writing again. It's funny. I made the tool for writing and then I didn't write for a long time, but I'm back into writing. And so I'm thinking about my author platform again. And so hopefully we'll have an author website soon and I'll have my books up on there.
good, good. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're getting back into writing because it is funny that you when you start a company and a company like yours that's been growing for a few years, you have, you know, several people. I don't know how many people are working for your company, but that
Yeah.
becomes the main hub. And especially when you have, a wife and 6 kids, you have to make sure that the
Yeah.
company is bringing in revenue, and then the book projects just kind of get pushed aside. So it's nice to see that you've, opened the shelf, pulled them out, dusted them off, and you're getting back into it. So we
I
will
know.
redirect people to that Facebook group for Plottr. And then when you are ready to start your author platform, you just drop some lines in there, and then people can go follow you for your personal writing.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple books out there, and you can look on Amazon for C. Lewis S. That's the name I write under. Um, but but yeah, other than like, I don't really have much of a website, or I don't have a website. So
Well, you have one.
someday.
It's plotter.com. That's your website for now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's my business card.
Well, Cameron, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. I'm really excited. Like I said, to everyone listening or watching, I was able to get a deep dive, a little behind the scenes tour into Plottr. I think it is fantastic. Like Cameron was saying, there are many different sites out there. We all know that there are so many different writing options, writing tools. There are some writing slash outlining tools that, like Cameron, you said that they are good ones, but there are pros and cons to both. Knowing that this comes from a writer and from you solving problems, like those are the businesses that I love. So, like, our business is solving problems of time, and your business is solving problems of having a good structure platform that you can use. So for fiction and
Yeah, yeah.
nonfiction writers, highly suggest going start that free trial. I'll place the link inside of the show description. But Cameron, again, thank you for being here, and we look forward to seeing everything new that Plottr brings at the end of the month and then in the near future.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
We appreciate it.